Seahawks fans, wherever you may be, welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Seahawks fans, welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, here with Keith Myers. Keith, it's a great day to be a Seahawks fan, and it's a great day to have a couple mock drafts queued up and ready to go in this week's fifth annual mock draft show. So welcome into the show. How you doing, man?
I'm here. I'm ready. It's Tuesday when we're recording this. The draft starts in 2 days.
Yeah,
I'm ready. Although the Seahawks have nothing to do with the first day. They may not even go to work that day.
That's the plan, but you just never know.
They may wake up on Thursday and go for a jog and, take some time and, not even go into the office.
Crazy though.
Go up on Friday morning.
Amazing. Wouldn't it be just John Snyder to wake up Thursday morning and go, you know what? I've been thinking about moving this guy, and I got this offer on the table, and I'm going to take it. I didn't think I was going to take it, but I'm going to take it, and I'm going to get back in this draft. That would shock the crap out of me, but I would completely understand because drafting is fun.
It is fun, and John Snyder loves it, and he's pretty good at it. But their lack of draft capital this year. I mean, the Seahawks are currently sit with 3 picks, and that isn't an accident. That's been an intentional thing. They have, rather than trying to load up on young players that they don't know as well as they normally would because of all the restrictions with COVID, and there's been no individual workouts, there's no combine, their doctors haven't been able to touch any of these players ever, and all of that. So rather than, take a shot on these guys that they know a lot less about than a normal draft prospect, they're like, this year we're going to get veteran players. And they were fine trading away their first round picks to get Jamal Adams last year. Then they traded Gabe Jackson. Basically, they're trading away picks because they are comfortable with veteran players. They want a known product. And are they missing out on possible upside and, cheap contracts for 4 years of a good player and all that? Sure. But they don't feel confident in that they're going to get a good player at the same rate, at the same frequency they normally would.
I have a question for you. Something that I heard in passing, and, I meant to pay more attention to it and look into it, and I totally forgot about it, but I just remembered. Wasn't there some sort of mandate that came down from the NFL as well, as far as how many players that the Seahawks can invite in, I don't know if it's to mini camps, but after free agency, the undrafted free agents that are available, unrestricted, undrafted guys. Was there some sort of cap on that for safety reasons, for COVID reasons?
There's usually not. There's usually not. I mean, that's why when they have the rookie mini camp right after the draft, they have enough players there to have a whole mini camp because they bring in, 20 guys on a tryout, and their real job is to just be bodies so they can run through the drills. And a few of them will impress and maybe get a chance. But, for COVID reasons, there's going to be restrictions. And I don't know what those restrictions are. I haven't looked them up for this year, but you're not going to be able to bring in 35 guys like you normally would. It's probably going to be restricted to 15.
In addition, I think they're skipping the mini camps, right? It's just all virtual still until camp begins. So, which is a lot of lost time for these new guys. Is another reason right there to add to your list of why the Seahawks have kind of punted on this thing a little bit. However, I still believe that they're going to, get back involved in this draft, kind of get themselves into different levels that they're not currently in. Right now, you mentioned 3 draft picks. It starts in the second round, the 56th overall pick. That's their first pick in the draft. Then it goes to fourth round pick 129. Then it's the seventh round pick 250. So that's not a lot of draft capital to move up and down the draft, but they could use a mid-round future pick to kind of get back into a round, or move around a little bit, move up to get a player that's still sitting there. They could drop off the 256, which we both fully anticipate, to pick up maybe a mid-round pick or a mid-round and a late pick. So we came to the show today still wanting to do our mock draft that we've done in the last 4 years. This is our 5th year. And we weren't just going to set it aside because we had 3 picks. We figured we'd set up some ground rules, we'd play by the rules, and we'd come to the show each with our own set of trades, picks, etc. So you kind of set up the ground rules. What were the rules coming in, and then let's just get into it.
Well, given that the Seahawks are starting with 3 picks, and the fact that, I mean, it's not just, they ended up with 3 picks. And I know I keep saying it's intentional. It's literally a franchise record for the fewest picks, and it would be an NFL record if they stayed there. So it is intentional, but so they're not going to keep trading and end up with 11 picks like they normally would, all of which in the 5th and 6th round. So we set up the limit, and we said, okay, no more than 6 players, because I think that's pushing it given what their capital is. And we also said that just for the sake of trying to have some consistency, that the Seahawks first selection has to be at 65 or between 56 and 65. That way they couldn't move down into the 70s before they picked a player.
Yes.
And so that gave us a couple of different ground rules. Maximum of 6 players. We got to pick before 65. And after that, all other trades were, we normally when we do this, we set a limit on a couple of trades, just because when the Seahawks go into a draft with 9 picks, there's just so many different options and whatnot. So for the sake of our own sanity, we set a limit on that. But this time we were like, no, let's see what we can get, and open the trades up a little bit more. And
so what was your just to begin, without getting actually into the picks yet, what was your overall philosophy? What did you, if you were the GM of the Seahawks, what did you want to accomplish with your draft?
Well, I mean, you look at what the team needs. They need a cornerback. They need a center. They need a defensive tackle that can rush the passer. They need maybe a wide receiver. And, just looking at that, I'm like, okay, those are the things I'm going to target, but I'm going to treat this like a normal draft. If there's 3 guys available that I like, I'm trading down. I'll trade down 3 spots because I know that one of the 3 will still be there, guaranteed. And so, I ended up, even when my attempt to have few picks, I ended up doing a couple of trade downs because guys dropped that I didn't expect to. And it left me, getting the players I wanted, but also getting a couple of extra players. So I ended up really liking my draft as it fell. And we should mention that we did this on the NFL mock draft database with their NFL draft simulator.
Yes.
One of the Denny, one of the founders, or the founder of that site, the creator of it, came on our show a couple weeks ago, and that was a fun conversation to talk to him. And we definitely are using his site to do.
It's a really nice simulator because you can set the parameters up to be about as realistic as you're going to get for a simulator. Of course, it all depends on the big boards where they draw those player rankings and so forth. But nonetheless, it's one of the best because you can set it up in a way that at least gives you the most realistic draft, which is what the mode that I used. On my strategy, likewise, I was trying to do the same thing. I was also had in mind that I wanted to be involved in more levels of the draft, meaning that, first round aside, I felt like being in the second, fourth, and seventh was just too large of a spread. I kind of wanted to get some picks sprinkled in between those if I could. And I knew that I was going to move off of 56 because in order to be able to really have an effect on the draft and get some guys in that can not only play this year, but build for your future, you really do need to add a few additional things. So I was trying to get to at least 5. And what I did is I use a relatively small second round drop back and a 2022 fifth round pick. I elected to kind of use that in one of my trades to be able to generate all of the draft capital that I needed to be at every level of the draft. So after the first pick, I'm in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th round with my draft. Ended up with 6 picks, and so I thought that was really the main solid goal that I wanted to reach and be available, have players available at all those different levels. And I thought that my draft values were that I was able to get were spot on as far as the trade value charts and so forth. Slightly favored Seattle on a couple of those trades. As you would expect for a team that's dropping back, a team that's kind of moving up, moving forward is going to pay just a slight premium. That's all I had. I think overall my draft ended up increasing a overall value of a late 5th round pick. So it wasn't terribly askew. So why don't we just get started? So
Yeah.
I think let me see, Keith.
So I ended up with 5 players, and you ended up with 6.
Yeah, and you ended up with the first player selected at second round 63 overall. I was second round 64 overall. So why don't you set up your trade?
So I'll set up because I traded back twice before I picked my first player, and once I traded back twice, I didn't make another trade. I just stayed at the picks. I ended up with 5 players, but I traded down from 56 to 60. And I got a 3rd round pick, 105. This is all with New Orleans. That actually favored Seattle about 9% based on the trade value chart, which I thought was. I almost didn't accept that particular trade because I'm like, I'm trying to make this realistic, but you look at the history and there are similar trades that have been accepted.
And John just made those type of kind of trades just in the last couple of years.
Yeah. So, it wasn't far enough away from the old draft chart values, where I was like, no, I can't, it's not realistic if I accept it. But it was close. I did actually think about it.
You should be in like the 120s somewhere.
Yeah, but they didn't have one.
I mean, that was your trade partner. I mean, that's all you can do.
Yeah, that's where they were. And I tried to like add back in Seattle's like 7th rounder or in order to kind of even things out, but it didn't actually matter to the simulator and to the rankings. The Seahawks not having anything in the 6th round really is what made it so I couldn't even it out and make it more realistic. But like I said, it did favor Seattle. It is, but if you look, the whole bell curve of how far off these things are, it's not like,
right. So
standard deviations up.
The same boat. So you went from 56, you got their 60th, and they added a 3rd round pick 105 overall. So then what did you do?
Then I dropped from 60, I dropped down again, trading with Kansas City, and dropped down to pick 63. So the second to last pick of the 2nd round.
So you said earlier that there were 3 players there that you liked, so you felt comfortable dropping. Do you remember who the 2 that you didn't select were?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I've got that.
That's funny. You wrote all the notes. I just remember who went off the board right before I made my pick. But that's all.
No, like I said, I've got all of it, and I can tell you who they are because the players I was looking at I really wanted a center in this. I want to give Russell Wilson that guy in front of him. I want to finish upgrading the offensive line. I think, they made the investment there with Gabe Jackson with the trade, but they, getting a center, getting a guy that can, be there long term, because Posic's just a backup, and he's only, even if he ends up starting again like last year, this is probably his last year with Seattle unless he makes this massive jump forward. So I wanted a center, and the reason why I kept trading back, and I would have traded back again if our rules would have let us, was because the two guys that I was hoping I to get one of were both there, and a guy I never expected to drop was sitting there. He was sitting there at 56 to the point where I thought about drafting him, but I'm like, nope, I'm going to stick to my plan. I'm going to move back and get that pick. And then when he was sitting there at 60, I was like, you know what? That might be the reason why someone else goes center. And that just guarantees that I get one of the two guys I came into the draft looking for. And he was still sitting there at 63. So I took him. I took Creed Humphrey out of Oklahoma to be my my first pick. He's my center. Like I said, I never expected him to be there.
I hardly ever see him drop in the mocks. Well,
yeah.
And on the big boards, he's usually hovering around, 45.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's usually in that range. And
when those guys we didn't really spend a lot of time talking about.
No, because we didn't expect him to ever be there.
Exactly.
And so he was one of those guys that, don't expect him to be available. So you and I haven't even talked about him all that much, but he was.
Let's talk about him. So talk about an ideal fit in a Shane Waldron scheme. Not only the athletic profile that he offers, but the mentality, the smart play, the instinctive kind of play of Creed Humphrey. He's just on a different level.
Oh yeah. Smart player, a guy that just is a mauler, but he's got good feet. I mean, he really does all the things that you want and need a center to do. I mean, he just checks boxes. And I know, like, this is why I expected him to go in the 40s. And in most of the mocks that I've done, even with the same simulator, he goes in, the 40s or 50s before the Seattle picks. And so just having this, having him drop was just,
it's a draft day blessing.
Yeah. It was just so unexpected.
Sometimes it just happens, right?
Yeah. And so, I mean, he's a bigger guy, 6'4.5", 212 pounds, moves better than you would expect a guy that's 212 pounds to move. I mean, he's
312.
Sorry, you're right. 312. He's not a guy that is going to make you, think of DK Metcalf in terms of his athleticism, but nobody is. But he's
312 pounds, but he's got almost an 80-inch wingspan. His arms are almost 32 inches, which is kind of their criteria. But for an inside guy at center, I think, they did with Joey Hunt. They completely made an exception. He came a little later, but he's definitely big enough. And all the other attributes that he adds to why you would draft Creed Humphrey in the first place, overcome that quarter-inch shortness in his arms. I mean, that 4.49 short shuttle for a big guy like that is legit. And the 33-inch vertical, I mean, normally guys like that are, at most getting like 27, 28 in their vertical. And plus he's, did a bunch of reps on the bench. He's really strong. I think he'd knock this thing out of the park. I mean, if he's sitting there and we drop back a couple times and he's still there, your idea of drafting Quinn Miners and your idea of drafting Josh Myers and pretty much any other center prospect that you have in that range that you thought you were going to get goes out the window, and you go run up to the table and you put this pick in.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I would have been happy with either of those other two guys, and that's who I expected to get at this stage. And that's why I'm, if, like I said, with all three of them still available, I would have moved back again. I would have been like, you know what, somebody give me a 5th or a 6th round pick, and I'll drop back to 66 or, 65, somewhere in there. Because even if one of the centers gets taken, I'm still going to get one.
Yeah. Well, and we talked earlier, about Josh Myers being from
Ohio State.
Ohio State, right? And then we talked about minors and a few other prospects. And each one of those guys had definite upside, but lacked some sort of athletic attributes that would make them an ideal fit in a zone scheme.
Mm-hmm.
And Creed Humphrey checks all the boxes.
He really does.
The current scheme that we're going into. And he's a great pass blocker. So he can get out in space and block for you. And he's really, tough and a solid run blocker. But the pass blocking is his bread and butter. And
yeah,
he's just instinctive. And I like it. I like
he also
that pick
played
a lot.
He also played in a zone blocking scheme at Oklahoma and was a 3-year starter. So he would be coming into Seattle's zone blocking, philosophy, knowing, the basics of it already. And he's just ready to just kind of slide in and be a guy that they could depend on week one. And that's why it just made way too much sense.
Well, three things that are positive about this guy that I think just totally sent him over the top. Durable, started every game, right? Really smart. He was a 3-time all academic Big 12 honoree. And he had so much explosion and agility and speed at his pro day that he earned a perfect RAS grade, which is, expected average athletic ability. And he ranked first out of 484 centers since 1987 in that grade. That is crazy.
That seems good.
Yeah. So a couple things before I get to my first selection. So he needs to make it past the Rams. And the Rams draft at 257. So they actually draft behind us. But since you're moving, they may end up electing to take a center because right now on their roster, they've got Brian Allen and Coleman Shelton, which were backups and a practice squad guy. And then Austin Corbett plays guard, but he could move to center. They'd have to draft a guard later, though. So they do need an interior offensive lineman. The question becomes, do they move up to go get somebody else? Who are they targeting? Who fits their scheme and so forth? A guy like Creed Humphrey would definitely fit their scheme. So it's just one of those things. And then Green Bay, you got to get past Green Bay. Green Bay drafts 62nd. And they traded away their guy, Corey Lindsey, or he left in free agency this year. And they've got a guy by the name of Jake Hansen now at center. He used to be the center for Oregon. And they picked him up in the 6th or 7th round last year, ended up being on their practice squad most of the year. So 2 teams that would have to get by to get a center that both want kind of the same sort of profile, which makes it interesting for Seattle. So on mine, what I did is I traded back 2 times, just like you did before my first pick. The first one is I sent the 56th overall pick and got their 59th pick with Cleveland, and also picked up a 4th round pick 132 overall. So I got less value than you did, but nonetheless, I wanted to make that trade because it was a small trade back, and it left me more opportunity. As you said, lots of folks off the board. Right before I made that trade, Afite Melifuanu went off the board at 55, and that was one of the guys I was really thinking maybe I would stay for, or it dropped back a little bit and hope that he would be available. And then I took that 59th pick and I traded it to Tampa, as well as a 4th round pick 132 that I just picked up from Cleveland, plus a 5th round pick. So I traded.
And the 5th round pick was from the 2022 draft.
Correct. And in return, I received the 64th overall pick in the 2nd round. Also the 3rd round pick, number 95 overall, and a 6th round pick, number 217 overall. So that got me into the 3rd round as well as the 6th round. And then I went ahead and selected, at that point, I made another trade after this, but I'll get to that. So in the second round, pick 64 overall, I selected Walker Little, tackle out of Stanford. And a lot of things went into this pick. I was thinking about this pick ahead of the mock. I was thinking about a few other guys. I mentioned the cornerback, and the more I thought about Walker Little, and I went and did some research, and I watched a couple videos. He gave an interview, and he was talking about how he was preparing for the draft, and that he had taken a lot of snaps in practice time inside at guard this year in anticipation of teams asking him maybe to transition, since he hasn't played for a couple of years, really. He's taken 72 snaps, I think, in the last 2 years. And by the time September rolls around, it'll be nearly 3 years since he's taken a snap. And he thought, I might not be able to come in right away and play, start at left tackle, but if somebody wants me to start inside, I'm going to be ready. And that's kind of the thinking that I was taking here, is that extremely talented, athletic guy. Like I said, he went out with injury in 2019, opted out of 2020. So there's not a lot there for him, but he showed all of the athletic traits that you'd want to see in 2018, to where, 2019, he was setting up to be one of the premier left tackles in all of college football. And then the injury happened and so forth. So
yeah, if he hadn't gotten hurt in his 2019 season,
yes,
he would have been a first round pick as a junior that year.
I think so, because he has all the attributes. He's 6'7", he's 212 or 15 pounds. He's got the feet. He's got the ability. He's got the wingspan. I mean, everything you look for in a left tackle, athletic guy, he's got. So my idea was to have him sit next to Brown at left tackle. Go ahead and move Gabe Jackson over to right tackle and move Damian Lewis into center. Have Walker Little line up at left guard if he can, and learn right next to his, his mentor. And next year he would be there with game experience, ready to go at left tackle of the future. So that's kind of why I made the pick. I think that it's good value. There were a lot of guys on the board, to choose from. I just thought strategically, this made a lot of sense for Seattle in that he could transition. And then next year we don't have a first round pick as well. And it would give us an in-house left tackle, not only backup left tackle this year, but a guy that can come in and start for you next year and beyond.
No, I like it. We talked about him at great length back when we did our offensive line prep show, and he's a guy I really like. And if the Seahawks could get him and get him ready to take over for Dwayne Brown, so they don't have another George Fant year like they did a few years ago, where they were playing some basketball player and
go out and get Dwayne Brown. Is basically what you had to do. Yeah.
And they could just have a guy groom, be ready, and then step in and have the talent to play at an elite level. That would be ideal. And yeah, he comes with a little risk because of the lack of playing time for almost 3 years by the time the season starts. But you know what? You're not expecting him to come out and be that franchise left tackle on day one. Can't
go in at left guard. You've got a couple guys there that can play there. So
yeah. And so, yeah, just I like the pick. I think that anytime that you can get a franchise left tackle and you're not picking in the top 10, you got to go do it. And
it's the year to do it. I mean, if you're not going to have an impact guy, this would be the year. Because we only have 3 picks. You're trying to be realistic. Your roster's fairly well set. Your offensive line could go right now as is with Postic at center and everything else the same. And so it's just one of those luxury picks, I think, where you just invest into your future and you get your guy that I think ends up being really a perfect fit in Seattle and Shane Waldron's system, a more athletic guy than Brown is today, obviously. Brown heading into his 35th year or whatever, that and the last year of his contract. I think it just made a lot of sense. All right.
Yeah.
So
in my draft, he went 2 picks later at 66 to the Jets. So
interesting.
Good. I mean, basically, just
I think in my draft, Creed Humphrey was off the board in the 40s. It was just one of those deals. All right. So with my current picks, then I traded again. So I decided that I needed to move around just a little bit more. And so I traded my 95th pick overall and my 4th round 129 overall, which was my native pick, for Tennessee's 100th pick overall. So I moved back 5 spots. I also moved up slightly from that 129. I picked up their 4th round 126. And you might think, well, why do that? Well, it's a few picks. That's why it's a value trade is basically what I'm trying to do, is move up just a hair. And then I also picked up their 5th round pick 166. So that left me with 64 and then 100, 126. And so those picks are, everything is kind of added value for me. So I went from 56 to 64. I didn't have a pick until 129, so I moved up to 100. I didn't pick until 250 after that. Now I'm picking at 126. I also added a 166, a 217, and my native 250. So 6 picks overall through all the different levels. So I accomplished everything I needed right there, and I was ready to make my second pick. And in the 3rd round, pick 100 overall, I picked Benjamin St. Juice, the cornerback out of Minnesota. And I'm just ecstatic. He's one of my top 3 or 4 guys that I really like in the draft that should be available between 56 and 120-ish. And so I was tickled to have him, and he may end up being the best of the bunch, just because I think that he's going to be a consummate pro. He's going to come in, he's going to handle this business. He knows how to read a playbook, watch film, dedicate his game. He's going to be one of those guys. And so first and foremost, that was really important, especially out of this draft. You just don't know what you're getting. I think you do know what you're getting with him. And then on the field, there's a few things to work on. Some ball skills. I think you get him into Pete Carroll's system, I think he's going to be good. But nonetheless, he has those fundamental things. Agility-wise, he's off the charts. I think I pointed out in our cornerback show that he had a 396 short shuttle, which is elite, especially at a guy that comes in at 6'3", 202 pounds.
Yeah, that's the type of thing that you see Tyler Lockett-sized guys that are 5'10" do, and for him to do it at 6'3" is incredible.
Yeah. Now the straight line speed, it's a 4.51, but just a reminder, Richard Sherman at 6'3", 195 ran a 4.56. So it's not all about straight line speed. It's about technique. It's about press. It's about physicality. A few other things going on there. So I just think that he brings it, mostly in between the ears. He's just a guy that's very smart, instinctive, and I think he's scheme diverse. And I feel real good about the pick.
No, yeah, he was a guy that I really wanted with my second pick. I really wanted. He was, the guy I was looking for, and he was not available. He was gone. And so, he went 97 to the Chargers in round 3 in my draft. So, the fact that you got him at 100 shows good value. But by the time I picked at 105, he was long gone.
And that shows you too, kind of what Seattle's going to need to do with its 4th round pick at 129. It's like there's a certain set of players available in that range that you figure you're going to be there, and it really starts to drop off a little bit, right around 120. And so you're going to have to decide where you want to be in the levels of the draft. And I just knew, based on countless mocks over the last couple months, that I wanted to try to get back down into close to 100, so that I would have 5 or 6 players that I really like that were going to be available.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, before I jump into my pick, I want to say I did like the way you moved around in the draft, and you still picked in the second, but you went in, and it was the very end of the second, like the last pick of the second round, but you picked in rounds 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Like there was no gap in your draft, which I liked. Like that seems like a Pete Carroll kind of thing to do, or a John Snyder thing. Whereas with mine, like I went from 144 to 250 with no players.
Yeah,
like that.
That hurts. That hurts.
Hurts.
But at the same time, you ended up with an excellent draft.
Yeah.
I mean, I just have to say right off the bat, I think people are going to really like your draft and the players. Well, both drafts I thought were good as far as overall value, but I really liked the players that you had. It's funny, I put together I'm sure it didn't happen on purpose or anything, but I had a mock draft I published on the site, and I think three of those players are players that I had in my mock that I had at one time. And both of us have players that each of us have kind of brought to the table and talked about a little bit. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yep. So at pick 105, I which is my second pick. I got Jay Tufele out of USC, a defensive tackle.
That's a great pick.
And I it's one of those picks where you're just like, okay, he's available. There were some other guys available, but I didn't really look at them too hard. I was just like, he's not. I was thinking cornerback in this spot, but the St. Just was gone, and so it was either going to be Rochelle, who I didn't like at that as far as value.
A little too early, maybe for him.
Yep. So it was either that or Tufele, and honestly, that wasn't much of a choice. So I just went straight defensive tackle.
Were you thinking wide receiver at all?
No, not at this stage. But with Tufele, you get a guy who is 315-pound, 3-tech defensive tackle. He's a guy that can do everything. He is a super quick twitch, disruptive defensive tackle. At the 3-tech.
Here's another guy, Keith. Speaking of Walker Little, here's another guy that opted out of 2020 and probably hurt his draft stock quite a bit. He's USC's best defensive lineman.
Yeah.
At pick 105. I mean, that's tremendous value.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that's going to be able to
fills a need.
Yeah, he's going to be able to brush the passer from the interior and get upfield, force the quarterback off their spots, prevent them from stepping up, which makes the defensive ends better because now, they turn that corner, they're turning the corner at someone rather than at empty space because they stepped up in the pocket. He needs to develop his ability as a run stuffer a little bit more. He gets too jumpy and jumps into a gap and then can get pushed out of the way.
Yeah, it's a good thing, bad thing, right?
Yeah, so he's great as a pass rusher, but he's also going to be really disruptive. There are going to be plays when, even against the run where the running back gets the ball and he's standing right there, ready to,
right. He
either
made the right decision.
Yeah, and then other times when he'll jump that gap and then the play will be going the other way.
Right.
So he needs to get a little bit more discipline there. But overall, like we're talking about an upgrade to Jaron Reed talent-wise. And to get that at pick 105, and then also get the cap room and everything they were able to do with the cap room after getting rid of Jaron Reed, like it just makes the defense so much better.
So the cool thing about this guy is his twitch.
Yeah,
right? The twitch and the power. So he gets a lot of power in a very short amount of time and space. So it's just one of those deals where he's, I think, probably the most twitched up interior defensive lineman in the entire draft. And for Seattle to get a guy like that, a penetrating defensive tackle, disruptive, push that pocket around, is tremendous at that level. Hopefully a guy like something like that is available, in the draft, because I would just be ecstatic. Like your first two picks are perfect for the Seahawks because of the interior line value that both of those picks represent for the Seahawks.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can kind of tell my personal philosophy on roster building with these picks is that, you go center and defensive tackle. Those aren't sexy positions.
No.
You
it's the perfect draft to do that too.
but you go in and you get those big bodies that help you win in the trenches. They need to invest more in those two spots. Well, just really offense and defensive line. And I think you go get two guys that are going to be starters long term. And to do that in a draft when you don't have draft capital coming in, it just made a lot of sense. And I was just really lucky those two guys fell.
Wow. So I think with the first 3 picks, I wanted to make sure I got all my value out of the draft, and then everything else that came was going to be butter for me, because knowing going in, I knew that I needed an offensive lineman. And I was thinking interior offensive lineman until Walker Little was sitting there, and it's just too much value. And then I knew that I needed a corner. I wanted to get one of those top corners too. I didn't want to wait. Rochelle or later. Rochelle to me is a small school guy, unproven, still has a lot of stuff going on. So and then everybody else after that is just really hit and miss. And so the third pick was a kind of a luxury pick in a sense, in that I went after a wide receiver, and it's not the greatest need on the team, but we do need kind of at least a guy to come and compete with our guys there for the third wide receiver spot. And
compete with Freddie Swain.
Exactly. Yeah. And to give Russell Wilson another weapon, especially after this challenging year, and give Shane Waldron, another guy to find. So I went with pick 4, 125 overall, wide receiver, Amir Smith-Marset out of Iowa. And a lot of people are going, who? And I suggest everyone kind of at least look at this guy, because I think he's going to be on Seattle's radar for a guy that can not only get over the top for you with 4.43 speed at 6'1", 190 pounds, but he's also a great route runner, can get underneath. He can, Waldron can kind of create some jet sweeps for him, some end arounds, some isolation plays. They can scheme him open underneath. He can go out with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett and stretch the field. So he brings a lot to the table in that respect. Also offers some return game opportunities for punt and kick returns. So this guy's, in fact, he took 2 of those to the house at Iowa as well. So really good separation, route running, athletic ability, upside, agility, 37-inch vertical. He ran a 1.44 10-yard split, which is outstanding at that size. And so to me, I wanted to find an open field guy. You mentioned earlier in a few shows about getting a big possession style wide receiver for this offense. And I totally agree with that. But at this point in the draft, I was looking for a playmaker, and I was going to take one, either a big possession style wide receiver like a Nico Collins, or I was going to take a guy like Smith-Marset, who was going to give me some value in the return game as well as some speed, because you can't go wrong with speed.
Yeah. It was an interesting pick.
And a guy we never really talked about.
It was a guy we never really talked about, but he's just got speed for days, right? And he's going to line up there with Lockett and Metcalf, and the safeties on the other team are just going to start taking steps backwards because they can't. Like that's just too much speed for the opposing team. And so I like the player. Draft value, I thought you reached a little bit. In my draft, he went 164. So
it's entirely possible, and and I just didn't want to risk waiting for my 166 pick, right?
Yeah,
and that's maybe where he should have gone. That's entirely possible, and I just didn't. Shai Smith was sitting out there, and some other guys that I just, after doing all the work and research on the wide receiver class, I just felt like I needed to get one of the guys that was going to be a top 10 to 15 wide receiver in this class, out of this really deep class.
No, it's one of those picks that he might not make a big impact right away. But with that kind of speed and just natural talent, he will develop into a guy. And you can never have enough.
Mm-hmm.
You can never have enough just like legit weapons. So
and quite frankly, the David Moore days of returning kicks and punts, I'm tired of that.
Mm-hmm.
David Moore seemed to have straight line speed on paper, but never showed it, on the field. And here's a guy that's just twitched up and ready to go, and a clear upgrade at the position. And,
I mean,
even Freddie Swain, hats off to Freddie Swain. This guy's not Freddie Swain. He's totally legit.
Yeah, I mean, well, Freddie Swain is just a different kind of player. He's more of a guy that's going to make his living over the middle, but he's not beating people deep. He's not running away from guys.
You get this guy in open space. It's see you later.
Yeah, it's a lot like what happens when you get Tyler Lockett or DK
exactly
Metcalf
right.
in open
exactly
space.
Right. That's exactly right.
And so you just being able to, you have multiple of those guys, and you get some crossing routes going. You get everyone diving backwards because they're afraid of your speed, and then one of them pulls up on a 15-yard in route, and it's just an easy completion, an easy first down. And speed will do that for you. And so I like I said, I like the player. And
I like the drafts so far. Like your draft and my draft, we're kind of set up in similar levels. And it's interesting to see the strategy as far as who we decided to go with, what we're trying to do, et cetera. I really like your next pick.
Yeah. So my next pick at 129, which is, 3 picks after yours, is the guy that I said last week that I thought was the most likely that the Seahawks would end up picking out of the cornerbacks. It's Israel Mukuwamu, cornerback out of South Carolina. The guy is a little raw, needs some work on technique and all that, but he is just pure athleticism, pure athletic upside.
And long, really long.
Yeah, really long, long, fast, agile. He checks all the physical boxes for a Seattle corner to be on the outside, and he needs some technique work to really hone his craft. But he's coming into a situation where he may not need to start right away. Mm-hmm. And it took Richard Sherman 8 weeks to really get himself ready so that he was ready to be that star, and a few guys pick up Seattle's technique right away, and the Seahawks are going to ask him to change his technique anyway, no matter who they draft, because they require the kick step technique. It's really hard to stay disciplined and force the opposing wide receiver to declare what they're doing before you move, and you have to have like the physical traits to adapt once that happens, so that it narrows the pool of guys, and it's hard, but you're changing their technique anyway. So Mukuwamu needs some technique work. Okay, but they were going to change it anyway, no matter, even if he didn't. So I just think
but he brings enough. He brings enough. I mean,
he brings enough.
The physical attributes alone are worth a chance here. I think it's the perfect level, perfect area to have this kind of player added to your system. Whether it's a cornerback or a lineman or a wide receiver or running back, whatever. You take a chance a little bit on a guy like this, and he lines up so many different boxes for Seattle that why not? I think that he beats out, to get another guy like this. I think you'd have to draft, where I picked St. Juice or earlier, and you get a guy at the middle to the end of round 4 who I think has the potential to be as good or better in Seattle's scheme and defense than anybody.
Mm-hmm. I will note that there's a couple of guys that were available at this spot, like David Moore, interior offensive line from Grambling State. He's the guy that really won the Senior Bowl with his attitude and his ability to come in and dominate. Like, who is this guy? He's from Grambling State, and then he just dominated everyone. And he was sitting there, and I'm like, if I hadn't already drafted an interior offensive lineman, I probably would have gone there. But I did already draft one, which meant I still needed a cornerback. So it worked out for me, but I saw that and I was like, I wonder how, I'm trying to make this realistic, but how on brand would it be for me to take two interior offensive linemen in the first 130 picks?
I don't think that it's completely unrealistic for Seattle to double up on anything. It's just going to be weird. I mean, I think, you reach a certain level in the draft, you're going to take best player available, best player on your board, regardless of what year it is or whatever. So sometimes that happens where guys are available and he's the best guy and it's just too much value. You've got to go and get him, and then you deal with your roster later.
Yeah.
So I think you're up next.
At 144?
Yeah, I really like this pick. I'm jealous.
Yeah. So at this point, I was kind of done, right? I came in wanting a center. I got that. I wanted a cornerback. I got that. I wanted a defensive lineman. I got that. These were Seattle's needs. I got them all fixed. I got them all done. I've got 2 more picks and I don't feel like I needed to reach for anything. I didn't need to I really still need, a player. So at pick 144, so the very end of the 4th round, I selected Simi Fehoko. Is that how you pronounce it? Out of Stanford, wide receiver. And
man, what a pro day.
This guy he's a taller version of the guy you took 20 picks earlier. Straight line speed.
Yeah, he can be both. He can be both things for you.
Yeah.
He can take the defense off, but he's your big possession style guy too.
He's just got such a huge catch radius. You get the ball near him and he can go get it. You don't have to put it right on him.
I don't know what his wingspan is or what his arm length is, but he looks long. Really
he is
long.
Like
82-inch wingspan. He's got to be close.
Yeah, I think he's 33.25-inch arms.
Oh. And I think that's right.
Yeah, a lot of just a lot of length there, and he's got the speed to get behind.
6'4", 222 pounds, ran a 4.3740 at his pro day.
So let's see, another giant receiver that runs really, really fast, like DK Metcalf. Can you imagine how defensive coordinators?
Both turned out? What if this guy turned out what if he ended up becoming a Pro Bowl level guy? I mean, he just doesn't have a lot of experience. I mean, he's a 1-year starter here at Stanford with a marginal offense,
Oh, it's terrible.
He's kind of a game controlling wide receiver.
Yeah.
The guy
and
that
so
you
imagine
go to get the ball down the field when you have
Imagine having him and Metcalf on the field at the same time.
Wow.
And so we're talking weapons. It's like I said, I had everything that I wanted. I just was looking who's available. I'll look at any position.
Well, you add this guy to Kobe Parkinson too. So you get Kobe Parkinson, Fihoko, and you get Metcalf all going, and then throw another tight end out there and lock it underneath and a receiver out of the backfield. Man, what are you going to do?
Because you're talking Parkinson's 6'7", this guy's 6'4", Metcalf is 6'3". I mean, you're talking a lot of big targets to make Russell Wilson's life easy,
right.
Down in the red zone. So
I love that pick. I mean, it's just one of those picks where you end up walking away out of the draft, and it's the one that you keep thinking about. It's, you love the Humphrey pick and all that stuff, but yeah, it's in the trenches, whatever. But a guy like this, can change the game, change the dynamic, tilt the field. It's one of those guys where if it works, this could be one of the best values in the draft.
He also has 1 year of experience.
True.
And so,
there's a reason he's sitting there in the back of the 4th round.
He's a 1-year wonder, and those don't always work out. Those are
he plays it, he's kind of a 1-speed guy. He lacks that agility for those quick stops and starts and all that kind of stuff. So he's more right now anyway, especially with the route limitations. He's that guy. You kind of lob the ball to in the end zone and throw over the top and get, beat the defense a little bit. So but so was DK Metcalf, quote unquote, when he signed on.
Exactly.
So okay. So you don't draft for a while. You've got one more pick. So
I've got one more pick at 250. So we're at 144, and now I have to sit and watch 106 players come off the board.
Well, we draft
before it's my turn.
We did keep our native 250 together, so we draft at the same time. So it'll be interesting to see what we do at the end. So this pick was interesting because I kind of reached the same thing. I was lacking the defensive line guy. I really thought about doing a linebacker too, because we had talked so much about the strong side linebacker stuff, about the edge rusher, about trying to figure that out as well. And then this particular pick, I saw this guy on the board and I was like, this guy's normally going in the 130 range or higher, and he had this amazing pro day for his school, Oklahoma State, and I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't ignore his pro day and the tape, to be completely honest. So at 5'166", I chose running back Chuba Hubbard out of Oklahoma State, 6 foot, 210 pounds.
Chuba or Chuba?
Chuba.
I
verified that so I wouldn't mispronounce it.
Well, that's why I asked, because I've been mispronouncing it.
I know I have too. It looks like Chuba, but it's Chuba. 4.36 40 on a 6 foot, 210 pound running back. That can run in between the tackles for you, but is going to do a tremendous job getting outside and running that outside zone scheme that Shane Waldron's bringing in. This guy's like a perfect fit. Everyone kind of wants to dismiss this running back in particular. He had the big 2019 over 2,000 yards from scrimmage, led the NCAA, was a Doak Walker finalist, all that kind of stuff, right? And so now he's here in the draft. He's falling. Originally when we were doing big boards and you're talking, position group rankings and so forth, this guy's, typically, in the top, third round kind of a guy. And he just has kept dropping. And I think after his pro day, realistically, he's going to go probably a little sooner than this, but on my board, he's sitting there, and I just think it's a great fit. He's got, mental game. I think he's really good. He's solid. He's got a low center of gravity. He's a one cut runner. So he's perfect for his own scheme where he can get to a spot and cut up. And that's what they're going to ask of him. Get outside, run those sweeps, those wide zone things, isolate him in the passing game a little bit on the outside edge with that 4.36 speed. I mean, he's a home run guy waiting to happen is basically what he is. And at 5'166", I thought, the running back room is okay. It's okay. It's fairly full. We've got Penny, Carson came back, but after that, I'm not really impressed with the talent level that we have on the field. We've got Dallas, Homer's susceptible to me. And then we brought Collins back in. I think Collins has a better chance actually to make the roster than Homer this year. I really do. I don't think that Homer's really done enough or shown enough to warrant a roster spot. And if you bring a guy like Hubbard in, he takes that spot. And I think Hubbard ends up being the fourth running back in the room with opportunities to show what he's got and work his way up and possibly make a guy like Penny expendable.
Well, we'll say you got incredible value to get him at 156 because he was in my draft. He wasn't even available when I picked at 144. He went 137 to Tampa, and so you got him 20 picks after where he was taken off the board. I don't think
that he's going to be there, but he was there in my mock, so I had to take him.
No, yeah, I mean that is it's a great fit for Seattle. I don't think he's one of those guys that you can bring in and stick in any scheme.
Yeah, no, I think he's underappreciated for the scheme fit, and we just haven't talked about him as a running back option because we brought Chris Carson back, and Penny's going to be back, and so there's no need at the top end of the draft. But at this point and further back, you can start to look at guys to kind of fill out your roster, special teams guys that are bringing good value, guys that fall a little bit, regardless of position. And that's exactly what I had in this situation.
All right. So it's still, that was your 4th round pick. Whoa. Who is your 5th round pick? Because
all right.
I'm still sitting here eating popcorn, watching the rest of the draft.
That was my 5th round pick. So I'm going to go my 6th round pick.
Oh, that's right.
This is one of my favorite picks out of all my draft picks. 6th round pick, 217 overall, free safety, Caden Stearns out of Texas, 6 foot, 202 pounds, around a 4.4 42-inch vertical, 4.11 short shuttle. I like this guy, and I think he's going to end up going a little earlier, but I think he brings a lot of scheme diversity. He really likes to thump. He likes to hit people. He's got the ability to play some strong safety. He also has the ability to get sideline to sideline and play that deep safety for you in Pete Carroll's scheme. And I think with a year under Pete's wing, get him into the defense. You're taking a look at a guy in Quandre Diggs who's got 1 year left on his contract, and that might be a hole that we need to look at filling now. Blair is there, quote unquote, as a free safety, backup safety on the roster. I think he's going to be kind of scheme diverse and moving all over the place. So they might want a guy that actually stays at free safety and kind of locks into a position in a learning year. And he would represent, I think, a tremendous value at that spot.
No, that is a fantastic pick. Another incredible value pick, because you got him at, what was the number? 217?
217.
Yeah. In mine, he went 178.
Wow. And we used the same simulator.
We used the same simulator
and
the same settings.
Strict and all that stuff.
Yep. Yeah. Same simulator, same settings. So basically, I mean, it does show you that the way the simulator works is there's some randomness to it and that, but
which is a good thing actually. If you're gonna use a simulator, you don't want it to be the same exact same every time. So
oh yeah, of course. So that is just incredible value and a good player. He's a guy that I like as a backup free safety, a guy who will make his living on special teams for the first year or two, but has a chance to develop into a guy that can play and play well. I don't know if he will turn into a starter, but he has the physical attributes to do it.
And while you're learning if he can actually do it, he'll go play some special teams for you. He's a perfect special teams kind of guy. Fast, speed. He'll be a gunner. He'll be on the guy that is a great tackler. So special teams will be where he earns his paycheck for the first year or two.
Cool. All right.
So why don't you go with the first 250 pick here?
So at pick 250 with what was it? 8 or 9 picks after until the draft is over. And I've been sitting here for quite a long time waiting to make this pick. And I also went running back. And again, I didn't have any need. I was going to wait. I was going to see who was available. And I was just going to take the best player. And for me, that player was Javian Hawkins, the running back out of Louisville. He's a little smaller at 197. Usually the Seahawks draft guys that are 215, 220 at running back. But this guy got speed. He is a home run threat. And he also ran really well between the tackles in college. Now, I don't know if he's going to be a great between the tackles runner at the pros, but outside zone, get him on the edge, and he has speed to burn. Also, his athletic profile and everything says, hey, this is a guy that can be your third down back. But he wasn't ever productive in the passing game with Louisville. They didn't get the ball to him. And I couldn't tell if that was him or just the scheme and how he was used.
They just didn't throw. They didn't throw to their running backs very much. I think he had 21 receptions in 2019 2019. I think overall he had 21 receptions in his career.
Yeah, he just wasn't used in the passing game,
Right.
so I don't know, and that's probably why he's sitting there at 250. But
Well, it's his size. I mean, he's 5'10", 195. You kind of want a guy to be 205 or 10 or whatever.
You can't teach speed.
Exactly. He's not that kind of a running back. He's a Morris guy. He's a guy that's going to come in and change a pace for you, catch the ball out of the backfield, get to the outside zone. You're going to gimmick him a little bit as far as jet sweeps and zone plays and all that kind of stuff. And he gives you a little bit of return possibility. He actually ran faster in high school. He was 160 pounds in high school, and he ran a 4.37 40 in high school. Now at 195, he ran a 4.44. You could probably get him, on a good day. He might be right there at 4.39 or something like that. But yeah, you're right. Shifty, as far as being able to cut and go and juke and change direction. This guy's it. I mean, he's one of the guys I think I mocked in my mock draft that's posted on the website, just because at this exact spot, because at this spot in the draft, you're looking for guys that can do a couple of things really well, and he's that guy. He's going to be that change of pace guy, that guy that comes in. He may not make your roster at this point, but so what?
You're talking pick 250.
Exactly,
I mean,
exactly.
These are the guys that you're selecting because you don't want to wait till after the draft and possibly lose them, because at that point they're a free agent, right? And then so they can sign with anyone, and it's not always the right fit, whatever. It's who calls first, and they just sign instantly because they just want an opportunity. And so, you're picking the guy so you don't take that chance. And to me, I mean, I'm looking at Hawkins as a special teams guy. He can, make the team as a gunner, as a returner. He's got that change of pace speed, that his ability to just come in and take one to the house because he's going to run away from people. And like I said, you can't teach speed. You just can't. You either have it or you don't. And
exactly.
He's got it.
And that's that athletic upside and the speed is why you draft the guy, and he does have some ability. I mean, you watch him on film, he's a running back. He's got, some opportunity to come in and impact the roster. And, if there's injuries or whatever, a guy like that to have on your shadow roster, on the practice squad or whatever is a good thing to have as well. I went in a different direction. I already had a cornerback on my roster in St. Just. I thought we could use another one. I wanted to get other positions kind of filled. So I was looking in the defensive line. I was looking at some edge guys, some linebackers are sitting there. There's a couple of tight ends, low end tight ends that are there, mostly blocking guys. I figured we could pick up in the, undrafted game after.
So you got a cornerback?
I did.
Can I guess?
I ended up using my 250th overall pick on a guy that I talked about last week in our cornerback show.
Can I guess who it is?
Oh, sure.
It's going to be Mark Gilbert out of Duke.
No.
And
I was thinking, I had two guys that I was thinking about. One was the Pittock guy from Pittsburgh that I talked about as well, and Nashawn Wright, Oregon State. And I went with Wright.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
6'4", 190 pounds, ran a 4.49 40. He's got 33-inch arms and a 80-inch wingspan, and
super long guy.
Right.
Fast enough to get back, but don't ask him to change directions. He's a strict cover 3 zone only guy. But guess what Seattle plays?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so he lacks the playing strength, all that kind of stuff. He needs a year totally to come in and get into a system, probably a practice squad, or he's the back end of the roster guy that plays a lot of special teams for you. But he's got something. He really came and played decent ball at Oregon State, and I just think it's the Oregon State thing. It's the Oregon State thing, and he has 18 career games, so there's a couple of things going against him already, and. But he's got great length. He uses it to his advantage on coverage. He's got excellent ball skills. He's got 5 career interceptions in 18 games and a bunch of knockdowns. He just is high cut and needs to be in a scheme for a little while to adapt and come in and learn how to do a few things really good. And he could be your rotation guy, and hopefully with that speed and length, really impacts the roster on special teams. And that's kind of what I was hoping for.
No, he's one of those really interesting players because he's got 18 career games, not 18 career starts.
Yeah.
18
and a guy
career
like
games.
That, you could almost see transitioning into a wide receiver role if it doesn't work, for whatever reason on the cornerback side. A guy like that at the back end of the roster, but that sort of size and physical attributes, he can be one of those guys where you switch him up a little bit. So
and in my draft he went undrafted, but and that's this is the right spot to get him. If you're looking at it for a guy and you're like, you see his height, his speed, his length, and you go
scheme fit. Yep.
It's a scheme fit in Seattle, and a couple other places that play similar, cover three, a cover three defense. But that's it. And so that's part of the reason why he's going to fall because he's not
just have any experience.
Well, yeah, and there's only like 4 or 5 teams that will even consider him and have him on their board. And you get down to at this stage, pick 250, and you're like, yeah, let's go for it, because
that's exactly right.
Because he could be really good in this scheme, and you don't want those other teams like San Francisco to get him.
That's right. That's exactly right. So let's go back to the top. Let's talk about strategy. Why you love your board? Who's your favorite player? Who do you think out of this mock do you think the best chance of landing on Seattle's roster would be?
My favorite player on this, my favorite player or my favorite pick? Because my favorite player is probably Jay Tufele. I like the interior pass rush and the ability to get upfield and
he's nasty too.
He is. The most likely of all these players to end up in Seattle, I think, is Israel Mukuwamu.
That's an interesting
cornerback.
Interesting analysis. I have to agree. I think that you're spot on there. I think Creed Humphrey might be gone and likely is gone before this pick, but if he's there, that pick, that would be my favorite player.
If you take the rest of my draft, but instead of Creed Humphrey, it's Quinn Miners.
Yeah, I'd still take that draft.
It's still a pretty good draft. And I would take that because you're still looking at getting 2 day one starters and 3 other guys that can contribute, 2 of which have the potential to be starters down the road. So I like my draft. It's only 5 players, but I still like it.
Well, here we are.
Same questions for you. Which is your favorite player and the one most likely to be picked?
Wow, that's interesting. I'm going to have to say Caden Stearns, the safety. I think that he's got the best chance of ending up on Seattle's roster. It's probably going to end up being that, a lot earlier. So it'd be that 129 pick or the, if they drop back or whatever and pick up an additional pick in the 5th round, I think that he might be available, and they would be looking for him because of the athletic profile and the scheme fit and the diversity that he would bring to the defense. Walker Little's a pipe dream that I just made up for this mock draft. I think that he ends up going earlier than people think that he does, because I think there's probably a team or two with some extra draft capital that would be willing to take a chance on a guy like that. And so it wouldn't shock me if he goes in the, before pick 50. But if he's sitting there, though, that could be an option for them. Although, they may be thinking a completely different strategy as far as interior linemen and all that stuff. So you just never know. Benjamin St-Juste, I really like him a lot. I want him to be a Seahawk. I honestly do. I just think that he's going to go around pick 100, and I don't know if Seattle's going to have any draft capital in that range to get a guy like that. I think that by the time that they pick it for 129, he's long gone, and their pickings for cornerback at that point are slim, and they may end up going with a project guy. So, in fact, a guy like Mukuwamu would be maybe somebody that would be in that range that they might select, that they would think they might have to develop for a little while. But Benjamin St. Juste comes in and immediately starts. So that's the difference between pick 129 and 100. It's like, I think, if they can get into that 100 range, like 100, 105, they could have a couple of options there that I think that would fit into their scheme. So we'll see, and we'll see who's available. The wide receiver that, they might like that guy, and he could come in and do a good job. They might like the idea of the bigger guy. Although I have to say, a small shifty guy in Shane Waldron's system, they may have an eye on somebody, like that, like the Estridge pick, even though he's going to be 25 years old this year, might be a guy that might be on their radar. And then Nashon Wright, who knows, right? So, yeah, your draft, I really like your draft, especially at the top. The Creed Humphrey and Tufele is just great value and immediate starters on the defense. Well, the 3-tech, he'd probably have to work in on a rotation on that, but nonetheless, those guys right there are impact players. So,
yeah, like I said, the top 4 of mine, I have 4 players in the top 150. I believe I got 2 starters. Okay, Tufele may not start day 1 because Monet is going to be the technical starter and be out there because he's the run stuffer. But who's going to have the bigger impact, and who's going to be there in the fourth quarter and making play? You know what I mean? Like, who's going to get starter minutes and snap count? And I think
it might be down to like a Collier and this guy, something like that.
So. Well, yeah, because as a pass rusher, and you need the pass rush. So I think both of those guys make instant impact. Mukuwamu,
I think it is interesting that both of us chose to move back, and both of us ended up with that additional pick around 100. I think that the Seahawks are going to try to do that. I don't know that they're going to get the same value we got. Mm-hmm. Even though it lines up pretty good on the value chart, you just have to have a trade partner that's willing to work with you. And obviously, we both had 2 trade partners, and so it's just one of those things where sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it lines up. I think the other year, Seattle kind of got stuck picking in the first round with the even though we liked the player, Brooks, was there, and we couldn't move off the spot, and so you just never know.
Yeah, and so it is about finding a partner, but it also involves, if you're going to move back and someone's going to give you something like good value to move up, there's a reason why they're moving up. They're not just moving up because it looks good on a Jimmy Johnson draft chart. They're moving up because there's someone who has fallen that they didn't expect to be there, and they're willing to use 2 of their picks to go get that guy.
Yeah.
And there has to be that player who drops. And so that ends up being, one of the things that you look at. And so when I go through and I look at my drafts, because I kept the whole thing, so I know where they went. And I go, okay, well, who when they traded up, who did they get? Right. The Saints got Jabril Cox, linebacker, which is a really good scheme fit for them, and someone that I think that might actually be something that they would actually do that. And then at pick 60, the Chiefs moved up to pick Amon-Ra St. Brown, the wide receiver at USC, which, I'm not sure that's all that realistic given what they have at wide receiver and that kind of stuff. But I could see them trying to add there because, you're not getting as much out of Sammy Watkins as you think you would, based on his talent and salary. So maybe they are looking. But at the same time, like, is it realistic that they would go up and make that trade to get that particular guy? I don't know. I really don't.
Yeah, I think Cleveland, came up and got a corner. I think Tampa came up and got Brevin Jordan. I think that was a tight end with that 59 pick. Mm-hmm. And then I can't remember who Tennessee was going after.
If you need a tight end this year, you're trading up to get them because there's not a lot of tight ends.
Well, and I think Tennessee came up and got some sort of defensive end to hedge against Clowney's, leaving. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, yeah, I like our drafts. I mean, it was a lot of fun. I only hope that Seattle just kind of stays within their game. Don't do too much. Get the value where you can get it. Please don't drop back from 56 to 90 because that's no fun for us. And then add what you can. If you can get 5 picks, get 5 picks. If you can get 6, get 6. If you can get 4, but they're higher, and you have an opportunity to get back into something, and you trade something away or a future pick, I don't have a problem with that as long as the guy is targeted and you want him and you get him on your team. And so it's going to be fun. I mean,
so if
it's going to be a sleeper of an event, though.
If the Seahawks are to trade a player rather than a future pick,
we've talked about this.
Who do you see them trading?
I think it was Rasheem Green. Now it's either Rasheem Green or Collier, and I think it's Green. If they can get anything for him. Mm-hmm. What other players could you line up and trade other than a premier guy? So you're talking middle of the pack kind of roster guy. There's really nothing there. I mean, nobody's going to want any of our corners that are left. Nobody's going to want,
Cody Barton, perhaps.
He just doesn't have enough. Doesn't have enough starting experience and doesn't bring enough, I think, to warrant anything more than the 7th or 6th round pick. Yeah, I would bring Green. If you could get a 5th round for Green, I would take it. Green's got some upside. He's got the skills and so forth. He just needs to put it together on a team, I think, where he's got more opportunity.
He also needs to stay healthy.
And stay healthy.
Because when he's healthy, we've seen flashes of his talent.
So would you trade, this is going to sound just absurd, but would you trade Puna Ford?
No.
Knowing that you've got Woods this year and you add a Tufalele in your draft?
No. I wouldn't. I'd trade Monet before I'd trade Puna Ford.
And Monet's not going to get anything. I mean, there's 100 Monets in the NFL.
Yeah, he's like Al Woods. Right. There's a lot of guys like that, but I wouldn't trade Puna Ford. He is kind of an unsung hero of that defense.
He's a top 15 defensive tackle.
Yeah, he really is.
Which means you could get a little bit for him. I think
true.
Might toss you a 3rd round pick.
But then who do you replace him with?
Benjamin St. Juste.
He doesn't play defensive tackle.
Al Woods this year as a placeholder, as a kind of a run stuffing defensive tackle, and Monet, you just kind of plug that thing, and maybe you pick up a free agent guy later. You're not going to get Puna back, but you got something for him, and you use that.
I think I'd rather have Puna Ford.
Who else on the team though would command any sort of draft capital that's not Adams, Wagner, Wilson?
Yeah,
it's hard to think of one, which tells you just how talent deficit we might in fact be. Although I think we're still a 10-11 win team with a little bit more difficult schedule coming up, but it's still kind of a journeyman's roster.
The players that I could see, no one's given up a 1st round pick. We're not talking about that. We're talking about like a 4th round pick or a 5th round pick. But maybe someone will give you a 3rd for Penny. Or who's the tight end out of Washington?
Disley.
Man, I could see
about two players with a lot of potential that have been injury stricken.
Mm-hmm. I could see either one of those fetching a reasonable mid-round pick.
4th round pick each.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which is not spectacular. I mean, you might be able to take that 4th round pick and combine it with your other 4th round pick and move up a little bit to get your guy, in the 110 range. But I don't know. I mean, I really don't. Penny is just the 4th year on the roster, and he's still an unknown.
There's so much talent. There's so much talent there, but he's missed parts of 2 seasons with injury, and it's been a real struggle for him.
Mm-hmm.
And Disley missed pretty much all of 2 seasons with injury,
mm-hmm.
and then came back to be.
I think he played safe.
Unspectacular.
I think he just probably wanted to get through a season. I don't blame him in a certain sense, but this year he's really going to have to step it up. And it'll be interesting. I think the roster is going to be okay. It's going to be good. I think it's a 10-11-1 season, but I'm not sure, depending on how the defensive line ends up. But that could push us over the top. But we play in such a tough division; it's going to be hard just getting out of the division.
And that's why you don't trade Poona Ford, though.
Yeah,
because it depends on how the defensive line turns out. Well, you don't trade
mm-hmm.
your best interior player,
right?
But
you trade your 9th best defensive line player, which is Rasheem Green right now.
Yeah,
you're not going to get anything out of Benson Mayowa or anything like that.
Well, he just signed a contract. He's not eligible to be
Taylor's
traded.
Not going to get anything for you because he hasn't stepped on the field. You don't even know what you've got. Robinson's, probably you could get the same pick you spent on him last year, a 5th round pick. There's just not a lot of draft capital, but I think that we're going to still be really good, really solid, a lot of potential there. But they do need to kind of come out on the field and prove it. Especially Taylor. I'm really looking forward to seeing Taylor on the field. It's just one of those things where it's almost a draft pick this year.
Yeah, I mean, it really is, because we didn't see him. He didn't play a single snap.
I don't even know what he looks like
because of his injury. And
I'm just being honest.
Yeah, he didn't play a single snap because of that leg surgery, and now he's going to have a chance to come out. He's basically a rookie, and but he's still he was a guy that was really good in college and has a ton of talent and potential. And he's a rookie.
Yeah. We don't even know where he's going to play. I mean, we have a stacked roster. There's going to be guys, especially if Aldon Smith ends up making it out of his legal conundrum. It's a roster where folks are going to get cut. And so it's just one of those things where you take a look at those rotations, and it'll be definitely a competition this year, no doubt. So anyway, all right, it's draft week. So everyone that's listening, Thursday, the 1st round, like Keith said, go to bed early, or
don't stay up for it.
Yeah, and then
go have a drink.
Friday should be interesting. We should have the pick there, the 2nd rounder. Who knows what's going to happen? We could turn that into a couple day 2 picks. I doubt it. It's probably going to be, a day 2 or 2 day 3 picks that come out of dropping back a little bit. They might shock us and not drop back at all. But I would, Friday you're going to see 1 pick.
Get your chores done on Thursday. Go mow your lawn. Go clean out your gutters. Do whatever it is that needs done, so that way you can actually watch the draft when the Seahawks might actually select a player, because they're not doing anything on Thursday.
Yeah. Or some folks this year I've read they're just going to skip it. Pick up the newspaper that they're click online on Sunday and figure it all out. Because it is tough. It's going to be tough to watch, unless it lines up like my mock, which is probably unlikely, where you've got picks, every once in a while, and you could kind of keep hanging. But it could be, 100 plus picks in between our 4th rounder and our 7th, and that's not going to be any fun. So,
yeah, because that was my draft. When I picked that
fun,
at 144 and then had to wait till 250,
that's 3 rounds of waiting.
Yeah. Even though it's a simulator and it just runs through picks really quick, I had time to get up and go get something to drink.
That's funny.
So,
All right. So next week we're going to have a kind of a draft review show. We're going to have a guest. I have not yet booked it completely, so we'll see what happens there. We might be doing it together again by ourselves, but I'll try to get somebody on. I reached out, and I think the message got overlooked because there was a bunch of other stuff being communicated at the same time. So anything else, Keith? And we'll get out of here.
No, let's get out of here.
All right. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. I'm at NW Seahawk. The show is at Hawks Playbook. Seahawksplaybook.com has all the shows archived, and your favorite podcast app, and YouTube has everything current and up to date. So subscribe. Make sure it lands in your feed every week. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.